Hey, my name is Ginevra Collins. I'm the CEO and team leader here at Keller Williams in Overland Park. We're so excited to launch the Red Chair series. These are conversations with some of Kansas City's top agents. You're going to hear how they built their business, how they connect with their clients, and even a little bit about real estate investing. Make sure you tune in weekly for those conversations, and we're excited to welcome you to the Red Chair. Well, Maria, thank you so much for coming today. We are so excited to feature you on our Red Chair series.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Maria, can you introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us about you, what you did before real estate, and kind of how you got into the investment world.
Yeah, my name is Maria Koch. I always joke with people that I accidentally started investing in real estate. What happened is I graduated nursing school in 2015, and I just knew I wanted to do something with my money. I met up with, the finance bros that I went to college with who were like, tell me to put it in the stock market. And that probably would have been really great looking back. But I was like, I couldn't conceptualize it. I was like, I think I'm going to buy like a physical asset. I think I'm going to buy a house. And I do not come from like family of homeowners. Everyone in my family are long-term renters. And they're like, you're crazy. What are you doing? I was like, I don't know. I'm going to buy a house. So I did. And I bought too big of a house at the time.
Okay.
Because I was just I was 22 years old, single nurse working at KU Med. And I bought a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. So as a 22-year-old, I like texted my friends and I was like, do you want to come live with me? Do you want to come rent some of these rooms? And after a couple months, I realized like I wasn't actually paying any of my own bills. They were paying for everything. And I was like, oh, that was kind of smart. Like that wasn't my plan, but that was cool. Then I found out that it's like called house hacking.
Exactly.
A strategy of real estate investing. I started telling like people I worked with. At the time, my now husband was my friend at the hospital. He was also a nurse. And so I was telling him and he was like, oh my goodness, that's genius. Like I'm going to do the same thing. So then I kind of started planting the bug of house hacking among my friends.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's actually how I got started too. So that's so cool that you're able to do that. Were you able to cash flow right away or?
So this was like pre me ever analyzing a property or like knowing what I was doing. My monthly cash flow on my house hack was $200. Is pretty good for like not analyzing or not knowing. Now I did nothing good with that money. I was like, oh my goodness, this is the best investment and like definitely inflated my lifestyle. But the learning lesson came later.
A little lifestyle creep that always happens when you just like more cash.
I've made it. I've got one property. This is great. This is it for life. Like that was my mindset in 2015.
Oh my gosh. So kind of catch us up. So you're house hacking, you're renting rooms out to your fellow nurses. What happens next?
So I was house hacking for 5 years.
Okay.
So up until 2020, my husband and I had gotten engaged. We were planning our wedding. I was actually 3 years into a 5-year doctorate at KU to be a family nurse practitioner. So I was just finishing my 3rd year. And 2020 happened, which we all know about. And my dean sent a very like nonchalant email that was like, your cohort is so small, like we can't continue for the next couple years. We're going to have to take a 2-year break. And that was like my financial plan was to be a nurse practitioner. Wow. So it kind of derailed everything. And my husband, who had been waiting so patiently for me to listen to Bigger Pockets and read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I was like, no, I'm busy. I'm studying. Like, I've got stuff to do. Gave me about 30 seconds. And he was like, okay, so you don't have any studying, and just like started sliding me real estate books.
Oh my God.
And everything timed out so perfectly looking back at it because we were both ICU nurses. And so we took off traveling during that time to different hospitals that needed help because of COVID. And we like quadrupled our income by doing that. And he was also feeding me all these Bigger Pockets things. So I was like, okay, let's buy houses. Like I kind of go all in when I hear about something. So I was like, this makes sense. Like, let's buy houses. And this was in 2020 and 2021. So we were just picking things up off the MLS at 1%, rule. And we got very, very lucky because we were beginners, not really knowing how to analyze properties, just knowing that we wanted more rentals. And those are some of the best properties we have to this day.
That's incredible. So you were finding those deals on the MLS?
Yes. Yeah. At the time, I was not a licensed agent. So we were just like quite literally finding things on Zillow and being like, okay, that's $130,000 and it'll rent for $1,300. Right. All right, let's buy it. And I mean, we bought, I think, 9 houses that year. Just off the MLS.
And that's 2021.
Yeah, 2021.
Oh my gosh. That's incredible. For the people that don't know what the 1% rule means, can you kind of unpack it just a little bit?
Yeah, it's kind of an eagle eye view if you're looking at a property and you're like, okay, how will this property perform? So you want a property to rent for at least 1% of its purchase price per month. So if you're buying a house for $100,000, you want it to rent for at least $1,000. If you're buying it for $150,000, you at least want it to rent for $1,500 a month. And in general, if you're buying, like that, you should have good numbers and cash flow. We use that as like the beginning analysis and then, dive into like, okay, what work does it need? Is it turnkey? Those kind of things.
That's fabulous. So, will you kind of unpack your portfolio just a little bit for us, Maria? What you've done since 2020 up until now?
Yeah. So we sold off some non-performers.
Okay.
So right now, currently, we have 11 rental properties. They're a mix of long-term, short-term, and mid-term rentals. The majority of them are long-terms. And then our strategy right now is we alternate either flipping and using the BRRRR method. We would love to keep all the houses, as many rentals as we can, but a lot of times flips make more sense in this market. So we have been flipping quite a bit more.
So your strategy is you're buying them, you're fixing them up, and then hopefully you're able to add it to your portfolio.
Yeah.
For the BRRRR method, are you still finding that those deals are working for you right now on the lending side with the interest rates what they are?
So it's tougher. It's a lot tougher. I feel like when we started doing the BRRRR method back in 2021, 2022, we were refinancing all of the money that we got back out, maybe even more at that time. And those were home run deals. You're like, that's great. Now in today's market, we consider it a good deal and we'll use the BRRRR method if we can only leave 10% in. So if we're buying, say, all in on a project, it's $200,000. If at the end of the day, we get a renter in, refinance, and all the money we have into the project is $20,000, and we have an asset that's updated with new mechanicals and everything, we call that a win.
I mean, it's an absolute win.
Yeah.
Where can you actually get paid 10% for something
right.
and make money off of it?
Right.
And I think that's such a great point for so many people out there is how do you leverage that asset to create more cash flow for you guys?
Right. And if, we were to buy that property, turnkey off the MLS, if you will, we would be leaving much more than 10% in. We would be probably getting some sort of, if we qualified for the conventional investment loans, that's at least 20, 25% down a lot of the times. So yeah, leaving 10% in, we call it a win.
That's awesome. Well, tell us a little bit, I know you mentioned with your husband during the COVID era, that moment where that came up for you guys going, oh my gosh, we've got to completely shift. For you, was that like, okay, immediately you're all in, you're going, I've got no plan B? Or was it like, okay, should I kind of keep my nursing a little bit on the side? Or was that 100% all in for you?
So we hit our like aha moment, if you will, on the third property that we bought.
Okay.
The first two I mentioned were house hacking. So we bought them to live in them. That made sense. We were like, we can rent out to make extra money, but it wasn't like the sole purpose of that property. It wasn't an investment property. We were also going to live there. The third property we bought with no intention to live in it. It was our first true rental, if you will. And it was so easy. Like we, reached out to our lender. We put an offer in. Like we had a tenant in place. We did buy that one turnkey because we were on the road, doing our nursing job. And I remember on closing day, we were kind of like, well, that was really addicting. And that was probably too easy. We're like, surely we can do it again. And that was kind of our moment of like, okay, now how many times can we do these? Like, let's just run this play out. How many properties can we get while we have this inflated income of COVID nursing?
Oh my gosh. And that sounds like that aha, that moment where you're like, okay, I know what we're going to do. And I know here's our strategy. Here's our blueprint for how to do this over and over again.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Well, walk me through, we talked a little bit about before, that first flip that you guys did in 2022. Will you kind of unpack that one for us?
Yes. So that was after we bought our rentals. And then we were kind of getting shiny object syndrome, as a lot of investors do. We're like, okay, we've done projects now. We've bought rentals. Maybe let's try and do a flip. So again, with zero experience in flipping, we like Google wholesalers. And of course, we come across this like big name wholesaler. And I emailed them and I was like, do you have any, projects for sale we want to buy in South Kansas City? And so they send one over. I trust their ARV. I trust their rehab budget. And I was like, that sounds good. You're the professional. And we just buy it. Lots of lessons learned on this one. We always refer back to this when we are talking to new flippers or even on our projects now, because we went in without analyzing anything and just trusting someone else's word, which is never a good idea.
Sure.
And we also went in and went way over our renovation budget. So we bought this one for,
Oh, you're good.
numbers. This one was in South Kansas City in 2022. We bought it for $123,000. It took us 6 months to rehab it when we only thought it was going to take us 2 months because we thought we could do it ourselves.
Oh,
So
boy.
this one, we were quite literally doing the demolition, painting, all the work, trying to do it ourselves. Not always the best idea. So we went 4 months over on our timeline, and I think we ended up spending $80,000 on the rehab. Sold this one for $212,000. And the only reason we made a profit was because it was the crazy market of 2022 and things were going over asking price.
Sure.
When we listed it for sale, we were okay with losing $5,000. We were like, we're getting out of this project. We're going to lose $5,000 on it. Because it was 2022 and things were a little crazy, we actually ended up making $7,000, but we did absolutely everything wrong on it.
My gosh. And I mean, that's such a great example of, thankfully you guys made money, but the cost of tuition, as an investor and learning the hard way. Well, how have you taken that experience and what are you doing differently because of that?
Well, I remember telling my family that we made $7,000 on it and they're like, and we were excited. Well, you guys worked for 6 months doing that. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Now we know how to do it. Now we know how to use hard money, find contractors, manage a timeline of a project. So from that first flip, we now have created relationships with hard money lenders, private money lenders, subcontractors, general contractors. I actually ended up getting my agent license because of this, because I was like, I need to know how to look at my own after repair value. I can't, depend on the wholesaler who's selling me the deal to tell me that. So it let us know where the holes were in our process. And we were like, if we can just keep repeating this, it'll only get better. And that's kind of what we did. And we still today, every flip we do, we learn something new. There's something that goes wrong or different or we hadn't planned for, and we just kind of tweak it and keep going. And it's kind of an evolving thing.
Yeah. And you mentioned too that you guys are doing some construction stuff. What does that look like now in your world?
Yeah. So when we quit nursing, we both ended up completely quitting in 2022. My husband was working on our projects. So he did luxury bathroom remodeling before he did nursing. So he was quite handy. And I was like, that's great. Why don't you just manage our projects, kind of act like our general contractor so we can have more control in that piece and know more about our renovations. And he did, and amazing. And he still manages our projects to this day, but he had other people begging him to manage their projects and, do their renovations. So he officially got his general contractor license and launched a construction company a year and a half ago.
Okay.
So now he still hopefully gives my projects priority, but he does have other clients. He does a lot of kitchen and bathroom renovations for other people.
Oh, that's fabulous. What's the name of his company?
No Coast Construction.
No Coast Construction. I love it. So looking back, Maria, and of course, you learned so much, but what would you have done differently on that deal?
Oh, man. Oh, on the flip?
On the flip, yeah.
Well, I definitely would have held it because it would have made a great rental. I didn't even think about that possibility. At that time, when we bought a property, we weren't looking at multiple exit strategies. We were just our plan is to flip it, and we stuck with it. Now, today, if I were to have a project go that poorly and go over budget, I would just keep it as a rental because time is really the only thing in real estate that's super forgiving. And if you can just hold on to it, you'll recover your money eventually. I didn't know that lesson then. So we just sold it, and we think about it all the time. We're like, oh my gosh, that would have been a great rental.
Unpack that for us a little bit. So say there's investors out there that this market has shifted some things. How would you coach them to take a flip that hasn't turned out the way they expected and then turn it into a rental project?
And I've actually done this quite often because of this market. I'll have people come to me that want to try and sell their flips. They come to me as an agent, and I talk them through the options of either selling as a flip now or keeping it as a rental. So an example, if you are trying to sell your flip for $200,000 right now and you would break even at that or even take a loss, it might be better than taking $40,000 loss today or whatever your loss would be on the house to rent it out, recoup some of that money and then sell it in a better market.
Absolutely. Would you do a BRRRR? Would you refinance it? And
So it depends on how you bought it. If you bought with hard money, private money, or some sort of loan, you would have to refinance it into a longer term loan, something DSCR or conventional to decrease your payment from the high interest, but also to have it for a longer term. So I tell people, what do the numbers look like once you refinance? Let's find out what your principal, insurance, taxes will be when you refinance, and can you rent it out, for a little bit more than that? That way you can stop the bleeding, if you will, or stop the loss of money and recoup eventually.
Yeah.
Because, historically in Kansas City, things have still appreciated year over year, and you should be able to sell in a couple of years and not take such a loss today.
Yeah. And I think that's such a great point. I mean, our Kansas City market, historically, we appreciate between 5 and 6%.
Yeah.
Which is incredible. And so if you're just able to play the long game a little bit and stop the bleeding, like you said, that holding cost is what really scares investors. And so to have some strategies like that is really, really helpful. Right now, can you walk us through your main investment strategy? What you guys do, your bread and butter, your very favorite thing?
Currently, we are alternating between flipping and then using the BRRRR method. So like I mentioned, ideally, I would hold on to every property I could and just continue to build my rental portfolio. Sometimes it does make more sense to sell it. So to do it as a flip, do the renovation, sell it to a home buyer in the end. Sometimes it makes more sense to do the renovation and keep it as a rental. We like to alternate those two strategies because they're pretty similar in acquisition and the project, and then just at the end, we can kind of decide which route we want to go. Do we want to list it for sale, or do we want to keep it as a rental?
For you, is it a profit margin number, or how do you analyze that or make that decision for you?
So I always start with analyzing it as a BRRRR project. Because if there's any possibility that we can keep it, I want to. So my process, whenever I get sent a deal now by, different wholesaler, another listing agent, direct to seller, however it comes to me, I analyze it first as, can we keep this house as a rental? Does it make sense? I look at what they want to sell it for, what the cost would be to repair it, and then what rent per month I can get out of the project, and will it cash flow? Right now, I'm not trying to get like insane cash flow on properties. If it can cash flow even like $200 a month, I'll keep it just because we want to add to our portfolio. If it doesn't make sense as a rental, then I'll start looking at it as a flip. Our numbers for us to be able to buy a property as a flip is to get a profit of either 10% of the ARV or a minimum of $30,000.
That's great numbers in terms of what you're looking for and why. And I love how you start with, let's see if we can keep it as a rental. I think that's a really good point because I think a lot of investors look for the quick cash.
Yeah.
But if you have a great exit strategy already set up in mind too, it can work both ways.
Yeah, we definitely leave the flip as plan B just because we want our priority to be on the rentals.
So walk me through some of your systems. So you guys have got 11 rentals. What does that look like on a systems base for what you do every day?
So we self-manage everything except for one of the short-term rentals because when I started attempting to manage that one, I was getting like questions about flavors of coffee and not having enough creamer. And I was like, okay, well, this isn't what I want to do with my day. So I do manage 10 of them. One of them I don't. I have a management software. It's called Avail. It's $5 per month per property, allows my tenants to log in, pay their security deposit, pay their rent, submit maintenance request, anything like that. So we can have, kind of a seamless way to communicate with them about anything. And if they were to, submit a maintenance request, it goes, to our team. With my husband having the construction company, we do have in-house like subcontractors and maintenance people, which makes it very easy. And I probably spend maybe 3 hours a month managing these rentals. It is not that time consuming.
On 10 properties.
So once they're stabilized, if it's like mid-project, that's where most of my time goes. But once they're leased and stabilized, yeah, it takes me about 3 hours a month, maybe.
Where's the best place that you're finding your tenants right now, Maria? when you go to rent one of these?
When I go to list one for rent, I will list it on Zillow and through Avail. So that does like apartments.com. And then I also put it on Facebook. I think 90% of my long-term tenants come from Zillow.
Wow.
It might just be like the most used platform. I don't know. But they have an application process. They can pre-screen. And then I have my application on Avail. So I'll end up sending any tenants that meet our criteria, I'll send them our link for an application. But about 90% of them come from my Zillow listings.
That's fabulous. What are some of your best practices? Things that you've learned, hard knocks from being a landlord now, which is a very different hat in a lot of ways.
Yeah. You can not have a bad tenant for a very long time. So I know in like hiring world of people, they say, slow to hire, quick to fire. I kind of use that with the tenant world too. I vet all of our tenants myself. And like I said, we upload the listings. I send them the questions. We have our criteria. I actually go meet them in person. I need to like knock on wood. We have amazing tenants. Like I have never had a tenant issue with a tenant that I've vetted.
Nice.
I did try a property management company back in 2016 for one rental. And that was the only time we like had to go through an eviction process. But I've only had one in the last 10 years of renting because I'm very like upfront with, my tenants. I'm like, we're not a big company. We're mom and pop landlords. And I introduce myself to them and I give them access, to us and let them know that like, this is our asset. This is what we do for a living. And then people are really respectful with our properties.
And that's a great point too. I've heard some landlords, they're more hands off and they don't want that human touch and connection. But it sounds like that actually works for you.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who are like, oh my gosh, you told them you're the owner. And I'm like, yeah, people are a lot more respectful with your property when they're like, oh, it's Maria and Lane, renting to us, not some, huge company that is trying to screw us over. I'm like, we're here. We want to, help you have a great place to live and have a great relationship with you while you're renting our property.
That's a great point. What is your process now look like, Maria, for finding and evaluating new deals that you guys might consider putting in your portfolio?
So we get sent, oh my gosh, a million deals, it feels like a week, which are actual deals. So what I will use my eagle eye view on like the numbers that people send over, like I mentioned before, 10% profit or 30,000 minimum for a flip, or like $200 a door cash flow for a BRRRR. So those, I will quickly analyze a deal. If it looks like it's going to meet those criteria, I'll put it into like my in-depth calculator. But I can analyze something that someone sends me in about 2 to 3 minutes to see if it's like worth my time to go look at. I probably look at 5 to 10 deals a week, not a crazy amount. And then any that like, would end up working for us, I'll submit our offer.
That's a great point. And you know what you're looking for because you're looking at so many deals consistently too. I mean, if you're looking at 5 to 10 a week, you know exactly here's my purchase price, here's what I can rent for, and here's that perfect buy box that you have that you've really curated.
Yep. Yeah, we have our buy box and we try to stick to it because those are the times when we get burnt is when we're like, start making something work. Like, well, if everything goes perfectly right, we'll get our minimum profit and that never works out.
Well, speaking of perfect buy box, what does that look like for you in the Kansas City area? Where do you love to buy? Where do you love to invest?
So our buy box is location-wise, South Kansas City, Lee Summit, Grandview. We love like the Waldo, South Kansas City area if we can stay in there. We want to buy something minimum 3 beds because when we're reselling, if we're looking at it for our flip purposes or even rental, we find that a lot of families like at least 3 bedrooms. 2 bathrooms most of the time. We can be a little flexible in that. We do buy 3 ones, but our ideal buy box, 3 bed, 2 baths, and we want it to need a full gut renovation. So we want it in, the worst shape possible. Since we do have the construction company, that allows us to kind of get the better deal on it.
Yeah. So you guys are putting those fixes and repairs in as you go to really increase the equity in the property.
Yeah. When we're looking at like a renovation budget, we're hoping that it needs at least $70,000 minimum for a renovation for us to come in there and do that. That allows us to add more value to it.
Yeah, definitely. What's kind of your read right now on the Kansas City market? Obviously, there's been some shifts and some different things going on. How are you changed?
So Like I said, I have been licensed for 4 years now. When I first got licensed, it was the wild, wild west.
Yeah.
Everything was selling. Things were crazy. I was trying to get a pulse on the market, and I was like, this is crazy. Is this what people have been doing? Turns out no. That was the crazy post-COVID times. Now I feel like the market is turning into like a more stabilized market. There's still competition in Kansas City. When things are priced well, they sell, maybe 2 weeks on market, 30 days on market. Now we're seeing much longer days on market for things that are maybe priced a little bit above what they should sell. We're definitely seeing things sit. The price point where we buy and flip in is kind of more the affordable price in Kansas City, so under $400,000, and we are seeing that move quite a bit still.
I love that. And it's that if things are priced correctly, things sell. Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things for agents and clients to understand out there, that when you're pricing it for the market, you're not waiting and you're not chasing the market.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Well, you mentioned South Kansas City, Grandview, any other areas that you think new investors should focus on here in Kansas City?
Yeah, whenever I talk to investors, I personally like to stay in like Jackson County on the Missouri side, the Kansas City metro. So areas that I look at: Raytown, Independence, Lee Summit, Grandview, Kansas City, Missouri. Definitely depends on your rental strategy. But if we're talking like very typical long-term rentals, those areas, you can still get houses that meet the 1% rule. There's just really good opportunity in those areas without being the higher price points of the metro.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. To grab something 150, you rent it for 1,500 is not uncommon at all in a lot of those areas.
Yeah, we just bought a BRRRR in South Kansas City. It's right north of Grandview. We bought it for $105,000. It needs about $30,000 worth of work, and then we'll rent it for $1,300. So it's right at that 1% rule.
Fabulous. And another one right in your portfolio to help out with that. Well, let's change directions a little bit. Obviously you jumped in, you've had 6-7 years of experience now under your belt as an investor. What is one mistake you think that taught you the most now, Maria?
Oof, just one?
One of your biggest ones that taught you the most.
Okay, one of my biggest mistakes was when we started using hard money, which is when you need to buy a project that doesn't qualify for conventional financing. You have to use, either hard money or cash. And I called one person and asked them to borrow hard money. I did not ask any of my colleagues because I was like, oh, I should know what I'm doing. I was kind of like too shy to ask a fellow flipper investor, like, hey, can you look over my numbers? And I was charged an outrageous amount for this hard money and just kind of took their word for it. Again, I was like trusting people. I was like, okay, like, you're a hard money lender. You know what this should go for. So I paid 16% interest on my hard money and 2 points, which is like nauseating to think about. And I tell people this now because I was like, that's crazy. You shouldn't be charged that. And like, check with your other investors. Like, if you're running numbers and you think that something is off, like, ask someone who's also flipping houses. Like, hey, what are you getting for hard money right now? Because we're all trying to figure it out. The market shifts for everyone, and that means it shifts for lenders. So, things can change. But if you don't double check with other people, that's kind of how you can get screwed over.
Yeah. And such a good lesson too. It's like to be transparent, to be vulnerable and honest and say, hey, can you help me check this out? That was a hard lesson and probably one you'll never repeat.
Yeah. We paid a lot for that lesson. I locked it in and then asked my friend, and they were like, what? They're like, you're not going to go through with that, right? And I was like, oh, we closed on that last week. Like, yeah, that's our interest rate.
And there we go. Well, hopefully it sold fast and you guys, it's in your portfolio now. Well, you mentioned one of your big aha moments was really when you had your first deal and you found that cookie cutter. What are some other really big aha moments that you've had as an investor?
So we had quite a few during our timeline, because as we would buy more rentals, we would have this question of like, okay, is this what we're going to do for a living? Are we going to be able to quit our jobs, or are we going to continue to be nurses and just buy rentals on the side? And one of our moments, I think once we had like 9, 10 rentals, that we had bought, all in that short time frame was that we could actually do this for a living. We could actually change our lives and maybe not be nurses, even though that's what we went to school for, and kind of take off on this path. And it was a decision that both my husband and I had to make. And we were like, okay, do we go all in on this? Is this something that we do? And both of us kind of came to the conclusion that we were like, we could always go back to being nurses. Like it's the world's best safety net because there's a lot of, job opportunity for nursing. Like, let's give this a shot. Like, let's try this. And we always joke because I've never went back, but my husband had, a moment of like anxiety and was like, I'm going to get another nursing job. And he lasted 1 month and he was like, I can't do this. And he was like, we can't go back. Like now that we've had a taste of like entrepreneurship and like investing and, working for ourselves. And even though it's like much harder and much longer hours than we would ever put into the hospital, it's something that like we're building for our life and our family and, our potential generational wealth that we'll pass down to our children. So we're much more passionate about it. We're willing to put in like the long, crazy hours for it.
And it doesn't always feel like work too sometimes.
Yeah.
When you're doing something you love with the people you love and you see that momentum that really builds.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. How do you guys stay motivated? I know as an investor, there's long nights, there's hard conversations, things don't always work out. How do you stay motivated for the long term?
Yeah, we've definitely had our ups and downs in investing in entrepreneurship, and we have found it so helpful to just surround ourselves with other investors because, again, they're going through it too. They've had these moments, especially if you can find someone who's maybe a little further in their journey and understands, and they're like, yes, it gets tough when the market shifts. Your strategy has to change when the market shifts, or it gets tough when you don't make your profit or don't make your payroll like you thought you were going to. And just surrounding yourself with other people that have also been through that and then survived that and kept going can help remind you like, oh no, it is worth it. It's first of all, it's normal to have these struggles and to go through it. And then it is worth it to push through because, at the end of the day, the more rentals we get is just building our portfolio, building our net worth, like buying ourselves more freedom.
Yeah.
Each rental that we get, we kind of think of as, time freedom, the less we have to work in the future.
And that's such a good point. And who you surround yourself with, it makes all the difference. That tribe that you guys have built of investors that can speak into you, remind you why you're doing it, and then encourage you too. It goes a long way.
It does. Because when you're, having all these crazy thoughts and, things that are going wrong and you complain to someone who's not invested in real estate or maybe not even an entrepreneur, they're like, yeah, your life sounds crazy. What are you doing? Like, you go to them and they have a completely different life than you do. And of course it sounds insane, that we're buying all these houses and have all these mortgages and loans and stuff out. So you got to go find people who are doing what you want to do and are a little bit ahead of you because those are the people that will be the most encouraging.
Oh, well said. Find your tribe, find your people. So if someone in Kansas City is about to jump in, make their first real estate investment, what advice would you give them?
Okay, I feel like I'm just repeating myself now, but go find other investors. Go to a local meetup. If you're here in Kansas City, absolutely go to the local investor meetups. There's so many that happen where you can meet other people. Again, if you want to buy a property, start building your team here in Kansas City. Network with people, find contractors, find property managers, find agents who are also investors who can help you look for things, who are running the numbers with you. The more investors you can find, the more you'll be sent deals and have your momentum in investing.
That is so true. There's so many agents out there that when they understand that you do that, they bring deals to your door constantly.
Yeah.
So great idea. Okay, we're going to jump into our rapid fire round. Okay. First one, what is your favorite investment book or business book?
Okay, I have two. I can't pick one. And
we can.
My first is very cliche, which is why I always like to give my second. Rich Dad, Poor Dad truly did change my life. It was at that moment where I, had grad school had just been cut off and I was like, what do I do with my life? I was kind of in a spiral moment and my husband passed me over Rich Dad, Poor Dad and was like, you should read this. And that was absolutely one of my light bulb moments where I was like, okay, we need to start buying assets. We need to actually make a financial plan. And it makes sense to me now because I read this book. Very cliche. Yeah, I know. It'll change your life.
It does. Same. Changed my life too.
And then one that was recommended by a friend that I absolutely love is The Go-Giver. I read it my first year when I think I got my agent license, and that's the first year I read it. It's not like directly a business book, it's more like mindset, but I reread that one often because it's so refreshing to put yourself in the perspective of just giving. You're here to just give back to other people around you, and truly, if you have that mindset, like, things come to you. If you have an abundance mindset for all of those around you, things just happen to come to you and work out in life. And anytime I'm kind of in a rut with, my agent business or, whatever's happening, I just have to reshift my mindset because I'm like, okay, I'm in a scarcity mindset. Then I start feeling like a salesperson instead of like who I actually am, where it's like I have a lot to give to other people. Let's change that.
Oh, that's a great book. Thank you for sharing that one. Favorite podcast or YouTube channel? What are you feeding yourself on?
So I am a part of the Wire group. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's
No.
Women Investing in Real Estate.
Okay.
I think there's like 200 of us members now.
I love it.
It's a group of all women, and they also have a podcast that they released weekly. And so I listen to it religiously every week because it is other women who are investing in different markets all over the nation and what they're dealing with. They do a deep dive into their projects and, how they got financing, how they found the deal, what went wrong in the deal, things like that. And so I listen to that weekly because personally, I love hearing other people's stories over like just objective data, do XYZ, and then you'll get rich. I love listening to other people's stories. So I listen to that one. And then I also listen to Bigger Pockets on the Market just to get like my data of like, okay, what are the trends that are happening in the housing market right now? What should we expect? Not that anyone has a crystal ball, but it does help to kind of look at the data to know when the shifts are coming.
No, you're absolutely right. To be prepared and to speak as that local economist too, it really makes a difference on all sides of the fence. All right, where do you think is the most underrated area in Kansas City?
Oh, do I say it out loud? Then people are gonna know.
We got to come from,
Okay, one of my favorite areas is the Red Bridge area in South Kansas City. So it's right on state line, right across from Leawood, Kansas. I like to call it the Leawood hack because you can like buy right on the other side of state line for a much more affordable price and still be in the area. And we've actually done a couple flips over there, and people love it. They sell really quickly because people love to be in that area. But I feel like not a lot of people know about it. I've actually had several home buyers who started their search, and I was like, okay, everything you're describing, let's go look over here. And they're like, oh my goodness, I've never even been over here or like seen this neighborhood. So I think it's definitely underrated and one of my favorite neighborhoods in Kansas City.
That's fabulous. The Leawood hack. I'm going to steal that. All right. How can people connect with you, Maria?
The easiest way is probably on Instagram. My Instagram handle is No Coast Investing. That has all of my access. It has my phone number and stuff on it. But I'm the most responsive on there, I'll say.
I love that. Well, any other advice, tips, anything, last minute things you want to share with our listeners to leave them with today, Maria?
I mean, again, I'm just repeating, but find your local investors. Find people who are doing what you want to do. Even if you are trying to buy your first property and you don't feel like you're an investor yet, go to those local meetups, network with people, because at one point we were all trying to buy our first deal and trying to learn that. And people are so nice and so giving at these meetups. Anyone who's going is wanting to network, is wanting to give back, is wanting to talk to you. So open yourself up, have some confidence to ask questions, and go to your local meetups.
I love it. Great final thoughts. You guys, everybody, Maria Koch, make sure you follow her, No Coast Investing. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time today, Maria.
Thank you. This was great. Thanks.